Just yesterday, I actually bought a total of 50 CDs. I actually can't even remember what I bought. So it's going to take me a long time to go through that listening pile. But the three things I want to talk about today, I've been listening to recently. I've had each one of these for a while. I don't know why I picked these three things to focus on, but I did. I'm actually going to start off by reading a quote that applies to the first thing I'm going to show. This quote is from a man named Luigi Russolo. He was an Italian futurist, active in the early 1900s. He performed noise concerts with homemade noise instruments. Actually, in Paris in 1924, he performed a total of 3 concerts, and in the audience was Igor Stravinsky and Maurice Ravel, as well as other composers. So that's pretty interesting on its own. I'm going to start off by reading a quote that he wrote in 1913. The quote is, "Ancient life was all silence. In the 19th century, with the invention of the machine, noise was born. Today, noise triumphs and reigns supreme over the sensibilities of men." I think that's a great quote. We kind of forget there's noise all around us. We accept it as normal, but if you stop and really analyze all the sounds that we hear, can be stressful and distracting, as well as musical. So you have to always think about that quote. Very interesting. It's actually from a compilation I bought on the Sub Rosa label. It's a history of noise and electronic music. I haven't listened to this whole thing yet. It's very dense, so I haven't had a chance to really, do a deep listening of it. But I hope to talk about it in the future. But it's a real great compilation of different, all the way from 1921 to 2001. But the first album I'm going to talk about is by a band called Throbbing Gristle. This album is called Dead on Arrival, the third and final report of Throbbing Gristle. These guys have started out in 1975. Organization called the Coum Transmissions, COUM. That was the 2 members, Genesis P. Orridge and Cozy Fantuti. They did very transgressive, pornographic, performance art stuff, and they ended up forming this band, Throbbing Gristle, with Peter Christopherson and Chris Carter. These guys are called industrial music. They actually invented the term, basically, industrial. That's another term. I think of bands like Test Department, Ministry. That's more industrial, really. I don't know why but they call themselves industrial. This album right here is actually the second album. Came out in 1978. These guys created their own personas. They try to disavow any of their previous connections to music. For example, in sound, Chris Carter actually was a sound engineer for the ABC News affiliate in London. And he started out doing light shows for bands like Yes and Hawkwind. Peter Christopherson was actually an artist involved in the Hypnosis Company, which did some famous album covers that everybody out there should know. So Peter Christopherson would be designing album covers during the day, and at night he'd be creating, noise music and industrial music. So he was a pretty busy guy. Uh, this stuff is incredibly interesting. They use tapes, voices, primitive synthesizers, rhythm machines, and other instruments. Uh, like I said, it's called industrial, but industrial to me, is more pounding. Maybe some of the stuff is of that style, but this particular album doesn't really have that sound to me. Uh, Here's a great picture. That's the young girl on the front uh, album cover. It's Cozy Fantuti's niece, Debbie. That's Chris Carter and Peter Christopherson at work at the mixing board. Here's a collage of Genesis P. Orange, and that's some album art from one of their singles they released. The back photo of the mixing board, the console. Uh, they actually came around at the same time as this other band who I love, Cabaret Voltaire, also from England. I forgot to say, Robin Gristle is from England. So is Cabaret Voltaire. And don't forget, people, we're not the only ones that had to wear masks. This is another great band, and this is a retrospective. That's really good. I'll probably talk about this in another video. Robin Gristle, they crafted their work. It's made to sound random, but there's craftsmanship involved in it. Everything is put together perfectly. And this album, this deluxe reissue, has a bonus disc of live stuff they did, and it also includes some singles. I don't know if it's just the A side of two different singles that they released. One's called Five Knuckles Shuffle. That's of course humorous. And the other one is called We Hate You, in parentheses, Little Girls. So I don't know if little Debbie over here would appreciate that song, but whatever. The funny story about this album is when it first came out, amongst several record stores I used to go to, I walked in there one day, and the clerks would always try to stump me. As soon as they saw me walking in the building, they would put on something, and I walked in, and they would, try and see if I knew who it was. Most of the time I actually got it right. I was not always right, but usually they were surprised that I knew what they were playing. So one day I walked into the record store, and there was 5 other customers in there, and they took off. It might have been like a Van Halen or a Journey album. And as soon as I walked in, they put this album on and played a song called Hamburger Lady, which back then it had a queasy sound. It almost made me seasick. I actually guessed right. I recognized the style of music in Genesis' voice, even though it's treated. And I asked him, please shut it off because it was really bothering me. But listening to it now does not have that effect on me. Maybe because I've listened to other stuff that's, more powerful or potent than this. But, they really try to create an aura of, transgressiveness. But this music, like I said, is actually well crafted. And, it's for me, it's actually got some beautiful sounds to it. When you first hear them, you might be a little bit shocked, but looking back at it now, with all the other styles of music that have been released since this, the shock value is a little bit less than it was when these guys first came out. Amongst my favorite songs are a song called Dead on Arrival, which actually, to me, sounds like this album, Cluster, 1971. This is a more aggressive style of music from Cluster. Their latest stuff was a little bit more mellow, but that song, Dead on Arrival, and basically whole album itself reminds me of this krautrock masterpiece. So if anybody likes this album or band, you might be interested in Throbbing Gristle also. Um, Peter Christopherson, uh, when he left Throbbing Gristle, he formed a band with Genesis P. Orridge also called Psychic TV, which is a great band. But his most famous band was Coil. I don't own any Coil albums per se. I do have this album, a later one called Time Machines. It was actually released under the band name Time Machines rather than Coil, but it's actually a Coil album. Um, this album features four long, drony synthesizer works that are really good, awesome stuff. I haven't listened to this um, in total yet, but it's four tones to facilitate travel through time. Um, each four songs are named after a drug. One is psilocybin, the other is DMT. The other two drugs I don't really know what they're talking about. Um, but yeah, this is a great album too. This is by actually Coil, but it's under the name Time Machines. But yeah, Throbbing Gristle. Don't let the aura they create. It leads you down the wrong path with them. They're more accessible than you think. They formed. I mean, they broke up and they reformed again, and they did stuff as recently as the early 2000s. Unfortunately, Genesis P. Orridge died maybe 2 years ago. But Chris Carter himself has some great good solo albums that I haven't really listened to totally, but I'm trying to get some of his stuff too. The next thing I'm going to show is a little bit different than Throbbing Gristle. This album is the Jerome Kern Songbook, done by piano player Andre Previn and soprano singer Sylvia McNair. This also features on some songs a bass player named David Fink, who actually played with Steve Kuhn, amongst other people. He's on two ECM albums by Steve Kuhn. One is called Mostly Coltrane, which I really want to grab. It's got Joe Lovano on tenor sax. But David Fink is not listed on the front cover, but he's an essential part. He's not on all the songs, but he's a really great bass player. Sylvia McNair is actually an opera singer who I think now basically just does pop songs and maybe Tin Pan Alley songs like this. So her voice, beautiful operatic voice. But on this, it's not really a classical music approach or a jazz approach, somewhere in between. She's more of a conversationalist type singer. And I love this because the words are really highlighted by her voice. So the lyrics really stick out on this. If you really pay attention, the words were incredible. All these Tin Pan Alley composers who wrote along with Jerome Kern are spectacular writers. Most of them were newspaper writers or worked in the advertising agencies. So they had previous experience coming up with catchy phrases. The words are really incredible on this. And this is a great. Andre Previn does everything from he does classical music. He writes his own compositions. He's done TV soundtracks, movie soundtracks. He's an amazing guy, a great piano player too. But everyone would love this. Whether some people aren't into vocal stuff, but his piano playing and the bass playing are fantastic on their own. But you got to pay attention to the words on here. Even if you can, check out the lyrics themselves and read them as poetry. It's the words are incredible, and this CD really focuses on the words as themselves. The other versions of these songs are fantastic too. They're all jazz standards. Um, All the Things You Are, uh, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, The Song Is You. There's a few songs on here that I didn't really know. One's called Land Where the Good Songs Go, which I think we all want to live wherever that place is. Uh, an instrumental, just a piano version of a song that does have lyrics, but it's just instrumental called Go Little Boat, which is a great tune. I was actually talking to my mother the other day about Jerome Kern, who I know she loves, and she actually let me borrow this. It's a story about Jerome Kern's life. I haven't watched it yet. Been too busy listening to music. His most famous work is this piece called Showboat. And I'm glad that on this CD they don't feature any songs from here, so it's kind of a mixture of less popular stuff. But you'll know the majority of this from different jazz versions, um, whether instrumental or vocal. And don't forget, people like, for example, this album right here, Bob Dylan released this probably in 2000, I think 15. I haven't. I bought this for $1. Uh, this album, I think, is basically all songs that are associated with Frank Sinatra. But it's that Tin Pan Alley type songs. So Bob Dylan, of course, is a big fan of Tin Pan Alley, and if you really listen to Bob Dylan's excellent words and lyrics, uh, it's sort of he uses those older songs as a springboard a lot on his own writing. So this is another interesting angle to this whole Tin Pan Alley stuff. Another great thing I've been listening to. I don't think I've ever seen or heard anybody talk about this band or this group. Um, I'm kind of surprised. They were popular. They became popular in the late '90s because the Captain Trip label, released a box set of theirs. I think it was a total of 13 CDs. I first heard that a friend of mine bought the box set. He was also a disc jockey on a local radio station. So between hearing them on the radio show, he also gave me a cassette copy of some of the stuff. I heard the majority of that box set. It's called God in Here. But it's a great, it's probably hard to find now, but this is what I'm talking about right here. This is a man named Jim Baker. He's known as Father Yod. He was a cult leader in California. He owned uh, natural food restaurants, maybe 4 or 5 of them, um, in California in the late '60s, early '70s. So he made a lot of money just with that. And when he started his cults, which is a great story, I don't want to get into. It'll take me hours to talk about that. But he basically formed a cult, um, and most cults somehow get involved with some kind of music. So this right here is called Penetration, an Aquarian Symphony. Uh, I bought this when it was reissued a few years ago. I saw maybe 3 or 4 other things by this band. I picked this one. I don't know why, but in retrospect, I think I picked the right one. Most people say this is their best album. It's actually different than most of the other stuff that I've heard. But the band was actually called Yahowha 13. I don't know if you can see this right here. Hard to see. But each band member well, every band, every member of his cult basically changed their names. So on here, one guy's name is Octavius, Sunflower, Zenuru, and Jin, Djinn. Jin was actually a guitar player. Where is he? Yeah. He was a guitar player in a band called The Fields, who actually supported the Doors and Led Zeppelin. Uh, I don't know if they did any recordings themselves, but so he was actually a musician before he entered the cult. I think these guys might have been in local bands also. This album right here features Father Yod playing kettle drums, whistling, and chanting. Uh, there's 4 songs on here. Each song is different. It's basically it's rock music. Uh, People want to compare it to krautrock, which it's not krautrock at all. The other stuff they have out, is more psychedelic. Like stuff you would find on something like this, the Nuggets kind of compilations, garage rock, more of a psychedelic stuff. But this right here is a little bit different. Um, of course, they have great. Even the CD has some great artwork on it. And like most cults, they had a Rolls Royce. I got to tell you though, I mean, he did have great hair, Father Yod. He was actually a Marine during World War II. Um, he was part of. I think there's a sort of in between the beatniks and the hippies. There was a group called the Nature Boys. They were into like health food, like he was. Uh, Physical fitness. He actually fit into that category too. He was actually good friends with this guy right here, Bragg. His first name was Paul Bragg. This is organic apple cider, which is great. I love this stuff. But yeah, he was friends with this guy. This company started in 1912. I think Jim Baker was born in 1922. So he was friends with the owner and the owner's daughter. So he was very well known in Hollywood. Steve McQueen was a friend of his. John Lennon went to his restaurant. Earth, Wind, and Fire actually, I didn't say that, I should say this too. They actually sold their albums in the restaurant, very small amounts. Uh, Earth, Wind, and Fire actually bought most of their albums. They didn't have a wide distribution, just whatever was sold out of the restaurants. I often wondered why they never got a major contract with a recording company. Come to find out, they were approached, but I think it was A&M Records didn't want to sign the total group, including Jim Baker. They wanted to sign individual players to have their own contract and maybe have their own band. So of course, Father Yod refused, to sign any contracts because he wanted the whole family to have their own contract, which never happened. So that answers that question. Uh, but they're a very interesting band. Check out anything you can by them because the Captain Trip has that God in Hair box set. This was reissued on a label called Cold Sweat Records. Um, it's really, like I said, it's rock music. It doesn't have any like ritualistic feel to it though. Kind of surprising. Oh, and one more thing to make a connection. One of the songs on this To me, sounded like it had a violin in it, electric violin. Come to find out, there's an uncredited violin player on there. It's actually a woman called Lovely Previn. It was Andre Previn's daughter. So she was part of that cult. I think Andre Previn actually called the police several times, to make sure his daughter was okay. She eventually left, and she's a musician in her own right today. So that's an interesting connection also with that. Andre Previn and Father Yod. Okay, guys, have a great night. Be safe.